Oh, that's the good stuff.
Welcome into Goodwill Podcasting. Today, just with Dan, Connor and Stone are both out. We are getting into a franchise that's meant a lot to a lot of different people through multiple generations, and that is the Karate Kid franchise. And for that, we could not think of a better guest than martial arts film freak, aka Tristan. You are someone that is incredibly passionate about one very specific thing. I mean, movies in general, but you have a very clear passion that always kind of shines through. So definitely wanted to have you on for this, and happy to have you here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started and where your passion kind of comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I just grew up watching Jackie Chan and Jet Li movies, specifically like their American stuff because I was a kid, but then also like watching Power Rangers and playing fighting games. So like just so many things revolved around the martial arts. And then sort of how I got into the creative space was I was just watching YouTube, watching movie critics, and your Chris Stuckmans, your Jeremy Johns, and all those guys. And I would be commenting saying like, hey, you should review this. You should review this. And of course they've got thousands of comments. It's just going unseen. Mm-hmm. And eventually you just get tired of seeing the same reviews for everything when you know what you want to see reviews about. So I was like, okay, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
So I've been talking about martial arts movies and Kung Fu stuff on YouTube and TikTok a little bit for about 8 years now.
Nice. Yeah. I think part of the battle with social media in general is it's so much of, and especially in our space, it's a lot of talking about the same stuff. It's a story will pop up and everyone kind of has a take on it, but I think it can get really repetitive and stale, I think. So I think it's wonderful having people like you that have a niche, have something different. And I think when you have the passion, you have kind of an authentic voice and something you care about, it really shines through. So I really appreciate that about you. A kind of general question I had is, how do you see kind of the genre in general progressing at this moment? Or do you see things moving in an upward trajectory or downward? Do you have a favorite decade? What do you see the future of martial arts films looking like? How do you think it's progressing in general?
The golden decade, the best time ever in martial arts cinema is the 80s. Hong Kong was the be all end all. You had stuff coming out of Japan. You have a little bit coming out of Thailand, but then of course at the late 80s stage, you have your Van Dams, your Seagals, random people like Cynthia Rothrock or Lauren Avedon, stuff like that. Where it is now, and it annoys me a little bit, and I think it started with The Matrix, as much as I love and adore The Matrix, is it showed Hollywood that you don't have to have a leading star who is a martial artist. Mm-hmm. You can just hopefully train them if they actually want to put the effort in, or, maybe make it look like they know what they're doing. So now instead of having martial arts movies, through the past 15 years of superhero movies and Fast and Furious movies, we don't get martial arts movies anymore. We get action movies with martial arts in them. And sometimes that's cool. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes that evolves into the John Wick series, where I think the first two are action movies with martial arts in them. But then you get to 3 and 4, and 3 and 4 are just straight up martial arts movies.
Yeah.
So, that's great. I'm excited for where that could take us and what that could inspire. But for the most part right now, when it comes to at least Hollywood, it's just action movies with martial arts in them. And I don't love that, but sometimes it works.
Yeah, and I'm assuming oftentimes the martial arts can most likely be kind of a watered down version. Or like you said, you have people that, you mentioned John Wick. I think Keanu is also a rare breed in terms of the amount of work he's willing to put in to train. I know when he was training for The Matrix, he had a broken back, or he had a serious injury that he was not disclosing, which is insane. But I'm glad we got the movies that we did. But I see your point. And yeah, I think it's I think I see what you're saying, where it's becoming more of a secondary aspect where it might be included. Yeah. But It's not kind of the primary focus. I will say the beauty of John Wick is John Wick has inspired already so much, and you've seen so many kind of like John Wick kind of rip-offs or things that were inspired by it, and I think we'll keep seeing that because with that franchise, Lionsgate has found a way, in a period where they've really struggled to print money and to make really good stuff. Ballerina is coming out soon. Are you?
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and
I mean, I'm a little bit wary, but I'm excited for it.
That's my exact feeling, and I was looking forward to it, and they sent that weird email, and everyone was like, just don't do
But
that.
then, like, I've heard from people that, like, no, it is good. It is weird that they sent that email out because it's good.
Yeah, and I still, like, I'm joking around about it, but, like, I still am pulling for it. Like, I still think that's a movie that I feel like would be really hard to not make, because I just want entertainment. Like, I just want it to be fun. Ana de Armas is really likable. It's a cool world. The aesthetic is interesting. Like, I think it's pretty hard to make it that bad. So I'm still trying to be, optimistic. It just
I will say more than Ballerina, I'm more excited for Nobody 2. And I didn't even like Nobody 1 that much, mostly just because it was kind of maybe overhyped for me.
Yeah.
But I'm just excited for that because of the director. They got Timo Chianto, who has been just blowing up in Indonesia, which, like, that was my thoughts on what was going on in Hollywood. The rest of the world, there's so much great stuff going on all over the world, particularly in Indonesia. And Timo Chianto has just come out as an absolute superstar director when it comes to all things action and violence coming from his horror background. So giving that guy a franchise like Nobody, I'm excited for what he could do with that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I kind of had a similar experience with that movie where everyone told me how good it was. And I watched it and I feel like I enjoyed it, but I feel like I felt it was fairly not mundane, but it was just solid. It was solid. It wasn't like super special. I feel like it's like a 3.5 type movie.
Yeah, if I would have been happy to rent that on a Saturday afternoon or something.
Yeah, and I do like Bob and all, but I'm excited for that sequel. I think definitely a fun movie, but I think the problem with, like, circling back to Ballerina, I think the thing is $90 million is a lot to spend on that movie, and I think like we keep seeing this where it's like the bar is set so high for a movie to succeed, and then if it doesn't do well, they'll be like, oh, see, it flopped, blah blah blah. Like, people will say stuff about women and leading roles and like that's not true. It's just like, for a spin-off movie like that about a character people don't know, like it's a lot of money to spend.
That's what I don't understand about so much stuff like that. Like, especially I mean, I guess with the world of John Wick, you have to spend so much money on ballistics and all this other stuff and travel around the world because they have so much on location shooting there. But I'm so baffled by what's so hard about making the Blade movie. And like, it's such a simple concept. You don't need to make it for crazy expensive. You don't need to blow the budget on it. Like, my pitch was make it The Raid. It's make it Blade going into a building full of vampires and trying to get to the head vampire. Lay your little Easter eggs, lay your seeds for the wider cinematic universe of the MCU, and just make a low budget, violent martial arts vampire movie.
Yeah.
Because that's what Blade, I mean, watch Blade 2. Blade 2 is a freaking martial arts movie. Yeah. Like, just make a low budget martial arts movie. Don't go crazy with a whole lot of the special effects and all this stuff. Just have solid choreography, make it a good low budget movie, make your money, and on to the next one.
But the thing is, I feel like it's exactly what you said, where they're like, oh, if we make a Blade movie, we're gonna have to tie in insane villain XYZ that we can then pull into the universe, and it like has to be this big thing. And like, rather than just being like what you said, like, let's make a martial arts centered like horror movie, and you don't have to spend $50 million. Like, let yourself make $500 million, and it's a huge success. Rather than something like, Captain America makes $500 million, it's a failure because you spent so much money. But that's a whole nother conversation. The movies we're talking about today, Karate Kid. This has been a really successful franchise, and I think, I just went back and rewatched this, the first movie, yesterday. What was this something that was part of your like childhood growing up? Like, is the original movie nostalgic for you? Can you kind of talk about that relationship?
I probably first saw the original Karate Kid when I was 12. My specific memory of it is my uncle's a trucker, and every summer he would take one of me and my brothers out for like a week or two on the road with him during the summertime. And I remember like buying a box set of Karate Kid 1 through 3 at a truck stop, and then like watching it on his little TV in the truck, and just was not blown away by it. And in fact, I never watched any of the sequels after that until this month, just because it was just like, yeah, this was very 80s and very fine. It's like definitive 80s. Like, it's one of my definitive 80s films. Like I said in a video recently, if you ask me, hey, name 5 80s films, I'm going to go like Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller, Back to the Future, Karate Kid, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it's to me a definitive 80s film, and it's great. It's great for that. I like a lot of things about it, but it's not something that I've ever really had a lot of passion for. Like, I truly love the Cobra Kai series, and I hold that in like a completely separate space than the Karate Kid film.
Understood. Yeah, I think when you think about the Karate Kid, like, it truly is. There's a lot of iconography there, and it is a classic. But I think it really is interesting when you kind of look at what the movie is doing, and you can compare it to a lot of the other movies around it in the '80s, especially some like martial arts movies or more violent stuff. It definitely stands out and has a very unique feel to it, and I think that's very much the point. But it really is. It feels like kind of a perfect storm. The guy that wrote it and came up with the entire franchise, Robert Mark Kamen, he really interesting guy, and he was how much I don't know how much you know about him. He was a martial artist himself. He was in kind of the Philly, New York area, bouncing back and forth. He was a guy that went to Penn. And he trained for like, I think 40 or 50 years, and very much kind of wrote this story out of his own experience and out of the martial arts scene, I think in New York. And he felt like everything was very kind of super hyper masculine and segmented by dojo, and everyone was so, fired up and really kind of pitted against each other. And he kind of like created these stories out of that environment, and with Miyagi being kind of a composite of a few different people. But he's an interesting guy to read up on, and I think the authenticity of his experience kind of shines through, because I think this feels very very real, and I think that's one of the reasons it really works.
Yeah, no, there's a very clear passion, at least for all of it. There's a great sort of supplemental viewing for the whole Karate Kid franchise. Saw you talking about, you said sort of how Miyagi being based on so many people. There's a documentary called The Real Miyagi, and it's about what's his name? I'm trying to blank on the guy's name. There's a, I think he might still be alive, but there is like an actual like Japanese sensei who came over and like he popularized like doing like karate shows. Like, you used to go to maybe like a state fair and see like the local karate school do like a little demonstration. He like popularized that. He is the stunt double for Mr. Miyagi. He was like he became like Pat Morita's like best friend. And yeah, it's a documentary all about that guy, and it's really, really good.
Fumio Demura is his
Fumio
name.
Demura, yes.
This is from 2015. So I think I'll actually watch this. This looks interesting. And that's, it's so interesting. You look back and you wonder if Pat Morita knows, like, when he's in this role, like, this is going to be one of the most iconic characters of all time. And I think so much of the 80s is like built on kind of iconography and these iconic characters. And I think he's definitely up there in terms of being recognizable and just kind of a beloved character. This movie was a huge success. They made it we're talking about budgets. They made it for $8 million, made 130. Obviously spawned a franchise that is still going today. And we'll talk about it, but I kind of mentioned in the beginning, it's interesting how this has truly spanned multiple generations. And I think, we'll talk about the Jaden Smith movie, but that movie has a pretty strong following now, Cobra Kai. Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think it is that continues to drive this forward and make it successful and viable?
It's a lot of rich characters. I mean, Miyagi may be a handful of stereotypes, but he's still a very well-rounded, well-written character. And the relationship, what makes this first one pretty solid for me on rewatching it. I rewatched this one this month, and I watched the entire Karate Kid franchise for the first time. What I found makes all of the movies work is the dynamic between Miyagi and Daniel. Like, it's the driving force of the entire thing, where, the training sequences are a lot of fun. I don't love the tournament stuff. It's even the Cobra Kai characters. You went from your John Kreese to your Johnny Lawrence. They're all really solid, fun characters. Even, I was looking up what Johnny's screen time was in the first one, and I saw a link to someone asking, like, why is Johnny so one-dimensional? I don't think Johnny is very one-dimensional. I think he has a few moments where you get to see some sort of level-headedness, but then the corruption of his master comes in. And of course, you see that at the end when he tells him, to sweep the leg, and he has like this look of like worry and like confusion on his face. He's like, "What? Why would I do that?" And then in the end, when Daniel wins and he hands him the trophy, they did a really good job of making a fairly rich world out of a very basic idea.
Yeah, and even when they introduce him, when he pulls up on the bike, he's kind of talking about like how he's kind of like trying to turn over a new leaf, or like, that's literally how you open with him. And then he, obviously sees Daniel talking to Allie, and he feels jealous, whatever. And that kind of all goes out the window. But yeah, I think, we're going to talk again about all these. I think he's definitely the strongest villain you have here. I also think, rewatching this, I'm trying to think of the name of the guy who runs his dojo is
John Kreese.
Yeah,
the actor. Martin Cove.
Martin Cove. Yeah. I think, and I don't want to try to make too much out of this movie, more than what it is, but I think it's a really interesting movie when you think about the fact that essentially everything about John's dojo is, he's, first of all, he's a Vietnam vet, which they show. And I think it's all these just like rich, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids with this super masculine, like kind of jingoistic attitude. And I think comparing that with Miyagi and the aspects behind him of like the fact that he was a veteran who fought for the U.S., whose wife and child die in an internment camp while he's fighting for his country on the right side of history. Like,
right. It gets really dark.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's sort of a bit of commentary there. And I think the movie kind of feels like it has more to say than you might think.
Oh yeah. Like that moment of Miyagi having his like yearly breakdown.
Yeah.
And when Daniel sees the newspaper, you just kind of, it doesn't spell it all out for you. You just kind of have to know some U.S. history to really understand the weight of it. Cause like he says his wife died. He got a note saying his wife died in childbirth while he was in World War II. And when Daniel sees the newspaper, it says like woman dies. I think it was in Manganar, being the internment camp.
Yeah.
So you just have like that. Just immediately upon rewatch was like, oh, what that really means is they probably could have helped her, but it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So it's like that if you actually know like sort of some American history in that moment, it's like, oh, that's really dark and really sad.
Yeah, and it's really effective, and I think, Pat got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for this, which was awesome, and I think that scene probably really helped him achieve that because it's really, really good stuff from him. But the studio, they wanted to cut that scene out. They said, "Oh, this screws up the pacing of the movie." Blah blah blah. Like, classic just studio just being morons. But it's little moments like that that to me add a lot to the story and to the character, and just make it work that much more. And it's really tragic. But I think when you compare their kind of philosophies, and also just, the movie is very not heavy-handed, but clear about like what it has to say, kind of about like class, like Daniel and his mother. Like his mother clearly is someone that like works hard, has to support herself. They don't have a lot, and they're in this area with all these kids that have everything they want, and they're all entitled and spoiled, and like, there's definitely a divide there, and that tension I feel like is kind of throughout the movie of people looking at Daniel funny because he's an outsider, but also that he's just not on the same like economic level that a lot of them are.
Yeah, when he meets Allie's parents, and they're immediately just like, you're not gonna go out with a boy from that area.
Yeah, her dad is very very stuffy, and they kind of push Johnny as this like perfect all-American guy. But yeah, I think there's very like, anyone could do anything if you work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps type energy to this movie, which like is interesting. But
as I will say, like, just as a martial arts fan, this movie does fully fall. It does hit all the steps, all the stereotypes of your like old school martial arts. From everything from all the adversity to like a lot of the best martial arts movies. It's like there's that one move. If they can hit that one move, it's over. And of course, we have the crane kick.
Yeah.
So it does fit every single box it needs to be like, oh yeah, no, this is a straight up martial arts film.
Yeah. Something I wanted to ask you about was, I think it's interesting. I touched on it earlier, but like getting this movie in the period that it came, I think there were a lot of movies that were unironically featuring stars or characters that were very much like John and Johnny, and kind of that just hyper masculine like action star, like, and this movie almost takes that and is like critiquing it or kind of making a mockery of it. I think that's interesting coming in 1984. I wanted to see how you feel like this, what your thoughts are on that, and how it kind of fits into that era, and if you see any like commentary there.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I never understood. There's something I never understood from people who in the real world are just assholes and bullies. Because I don't know, I mean, it kind of makes me wonder if people just grew up watching movies, because I feel like so many life lessons I got was from movies, video games, TV, where like I see people in the real world who do act like Johnny or Kreese. And I'm like, so you just never like seen a movie before? You've never seen Star Wars? Like you just never. So like, there's definitely like you got me thinking about like when something like King of the Kickboxers came out, which King of the Kickboxers actually came out in about 1990. Lauren Avedon is the star of that movie. And so that just had me thinking like, oh no, Lauren Avedon in that movie, he's a Johnny. He's not a Daniel. He's a Johnny. And so it is interesting that a movie would be like, no, this brash kind of asshole character, we're gonna make the point of this guy is an asshole, this guy is the bad guy. I can appreciate that, because there's definitely a lot of movies where it's just, hey, we're gonna make this guy who's kind of a dick. Hell, James Bond is a fucking douche. I mean,
and I think you can break down each Bond and kind of like Connery is just an absolute animal. Like it's really wild. But
Connery's a Johnny.
Yeah, and it's just it's funny because you said these people watch Star Wars, etc. There's a lot of people out there that just will hit you with the it's not that deep, and just that maybe they have watched it, but they just don't. They're just not taking anything away from it. And everyone watches everything for different reasons, but I couldn't agree more. I think it's refreshing to see, a different character or movie from this era having something different to say. And like, I mean, this is like Reagan's America, right? This is a very rah-rah, where blah blah blah. So it is fun. It's like it's a quiet little movie at its best with Daniel and Mr. Miyagi. What What are your thoughts on Miyagi as, um, I guess, kind of a representation of like Japanese culture? Like, do you feel like he's tropey? Do you feel like he's, um, you know, I think the stuff we talked about kind of adds a nice layer to him and does. I don't think it's that quite that simple, but I wanted to see how you kind of feel about the representation there and how he kind of pulls martial arts into the story for Daniel.
I mean, he can definitely be a star. I mean, when you've got a guy from, like, I'm pretty sure Pat Morita was just like from San Francisco. So when you've got a guy from San Francisco putting on the thickest Japanese accent you've ever seen,
Yeah.
Especially when you get into Karate Kid 2, and it's like, yeah, half those actors are American, just putting on massive accents. So I mean, yeah, there's going to be stereotype stuff he's hitting. I mean, all the philosophical stuff they have him saying, he's essentially a version of like the magical Negro character, you know?
Yeah.
Just Japanese, just I guess, you know, for lack of a better term, a word they would have used in that area, spiritual Oriental type.
Yep.
You know, so he's 100% a stereotype there. But again, what just makes it work so well is the dynamic between Daniel and Miyagi. Like, he can be all these stereotypes, but at least they humanized him. They humanized him in that moment of him having the breakdown because he lost his wife and newborn child or whatever. And you know, when you get to have those moments, they can be so much more. Like, if there's so many movies that, like, I honestly, I've never seen 16 Candles, but the character from 16 Candles that I can't think of, what's his name?
I haven't
Is it
seen
Long Duck Dongs that I'm thinking of? Is that something else?
It's the crazy accent that it's just a white actor, right?
He might be Asian. They just gave him he just gave him some terrible stuff to do. But like, I mean, what's his name? The Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking.
I mean, granted, that's also yellowface, so that's way worse.
Yeah.
But if you just give characters, even if they're like slightly stereotyped, if you just give them moments to be human, granted, this is also coming from somebody who's not Asian. So, you know, they may have a totally different opinion on it. But, you know, if you just give someone a moment to be human, then it can give you some leeway to maybe do some other stuff.
Yeah, 16 Candles was Jeed Watanabe as Long Duck Dong.
Yeah, Long Duck Dong. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's something.
Nope.
And
yep.
also, you know, that's also 1984. So the 80s, it's funny because, you know, you said this is kind of like, you know, a fine 80s movies to you. Like, I don't love this era in general. Like, I feel like some movies I go back and watch from the 80s, I'm just like really underwhelmed. And I think it's a combination of like what was funny and like the music and like the whole aesthetic to me, just I don't love oftentimes. And you know, you mentioned like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, I can't stand that movie. Like,
yeah. I understand.
Like, I think it's like unwatchable. But this definitely is a highlight for me of the era. Ralph Macchio, it's Macchio, right?
I thought it was Macchio.
Okay. He was like 22 when he was making this.
Yeah.
He looks kind of old. They all.
I think he works in this one, but you really start to see it in the sequels, especially the third one, because like all three movies take place within 1 year, but you really see his age in that third one.
Yeah, and I think, you know, he definitely is a guy. I mean, even to this day, he still does look young. I mean, I think Ralph in the new film is like 10 years older than Miyagi was, or Pat Morita was in the original. Like, it's really...
Am I weird in saying I don't love his performance
in the new movie or this movie?
In the original, really, in all three of the originals, I don't love his performance.
What about it don't you like?
It's just something about his delivery. I don't know. He feels like someone acting. He doesn't feel like he is Daniel sometimes, and he just feels like someone acting. I think he, like, you know, go back to The Outsiders. He is Johnny in The Outsiders. Go to even like My Cousin Vinny. I don't remember the character's name, but he is that character in My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
Just it's something here that it's like, no, you just feel like Ralph Macchio acting.
Yeah, so it's funny. We'll get to the new movie. I don't think he was good at all in that movie, but I don't mind him in this. I think the character is likable. I mean, so much of this movie is him just getting the living shit kicked out of him. He gets just
Yeah.
destroyed so many times. Like it's really devastating. But it it's also like this is a pretty violent movie. I think it was rated PG, but like it's definitely I think it's pretty heavy action wise. How do you think the actual martial arts are in the film or the combat?
Bad. Mostly not good. I like a lot of the training stuff. I do. I like a lot of that stuff, but it's in fact, I think other characters are quite good. Other performers, I think that William Zabka, I'd be curious. I've never looked into what his martial arts background was, but he's pretty solid. Ralph Macchio is bad. Ralph Macchio is really bad. But it kind of works. I don't mind sloppy choreography sometimes. Sometimes sloppy choreography works really, really well. But it's not great here. But sometimes you can go a little bit too far with it, I guess. Like, I don't know. You could kind of argue that like by the time they get to the end, the season finale of like the first season of Cobra Kai, it's maybe like, are these kids too good? But I mean, something about it works, but something about it, I think the final fight is really rushed. The final tournament is really rushed. I remember that being like more suspenseful and lasting longer, but like he hits that crane kick very fast. That whole final moment happens within like 2 minutes. And I was like, I thought this was like a 15-minute scene.
Yeah, and I think the argument can be made for exactly what you're saying there in all of these. Like I think, and again, we'll get to them, but I just think like, you want to spend the time on like the training and the student teacher relationship, and then sometimes I think you get to the actual like climax of the movie and there's not enough time to actually show what you've been doing. But I think would you have preferred with Daniel LaRusso to see a martial artist that was being asked to act rather than seeing an actor who's trying to convince you that he can has trained, etc.?
I think I would like to see an actor who can at least perform a solid roundhouse kick.
Yeah.
Which he feels like a very uncoordinated person. Ralph Macchio does.
Yeah.
Because it does not take long to teach somebody how to throw a kick.
Mm-hmm.
And I like get somebody with like a dance background.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if he has any sort of athletic background towards that in any way. Like even like Chris Evans. Chris Evans comes from a tap dance background. And so you can see he has that level of coordination, at least in the fight scenes where you get to see his face.
Yeah.
So what it really comes down to is I don't think Ralph Macchio is a very coordinated or athletic person.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. He feels kind of like gangly in this. And I think that sort of works towards his awkwardness. And I think he does feel like an underdog in this. I'll say that. And I think part of it is what you're saying in terms of how he kind of moves and acts. But very confident with Allie. I mean, the movie is just kind of him going back and forth between flirting with Allie and just getting his shit rocked, and then he eventually starts training.
Zero friends except for an old man.
Yeah. I will say I think like the bullying aspect of this is pretty solid. I think you feel like you do feel for him, like I said, because it is so aggressive and they really do go after him. And I think you see him kind of like get really isolated and kind of go into a shell where like he's, you feel like it's actually taking a toll on him.
Yeah. They don't do the Stephen King bullying. Like I feel like there's a lot of 80s stuff and it gives me Stephen King vibes of like Stephen King bullies are usually maybe like possessed or something. But like there's so many movies even now, and I'm like I'm watching this Korean series called Weak Hero. It's very, very solid. But like the bullies in that are just like trying to beat people with baseball bats and stuff. And I'm like, is no one worried here? Is no one worried if this child is a psychopath? Or also, where are the teachers? Where are the parents? There's so much stuff in a lot of 80s movies where it's like, no, this is a demented child. This isn't just the kid who like, oh, doesn't have a great home life and so he needs to take it out on somebody. This kid might be possessed or they need to go to a mental hospital. I don't feel that this movie goes that far, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, it feels like just, a kid who's really angry, or a couple kids who are really angry and like you said, kind of don't have the right person in their ear to like steer them in a positive direction. And I think the Karate Kid movies in general make a point of talking about like, the mentorship, like looking at the sensei and, what are you teaching? It's I think Miyagi says, like no bad
It's never
student.
this. Yeah, no bad student, just bad teacher.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, and like I said, that kind of goes back into their philosophies, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and when faced with being horrible, because I don't think Johnny or the rest of the Cobra Kais are ever really horrible. They're not great. They're not horrible.
Yeah.
And so like when Kreese, who is horrible, tells them to do something horrible, they're like they cringe at it a little bit. Like even like the kid who initially takes out Johnny's leg immediately drops to the ground and is screaming, "Johnny, I'm sorry," or "Daniel, I'm sorry, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
It's like, and that's a great moment. I love that moment.
Yeah, I agree.
And then again, when Johnny loses at the end, he makes sure that he's the one who gives Daniel the trophy.
Mhm.
And like they have those moments again. And you know what that really comes down to again is just showing they're human. There's only one character in this who I don't think is human, and it's Kreese, especially when you get into the second and the third one. So like Miyagi can be a stereotype sometimes, as long as he's still a human. Johnny and the other Cobra Kai kids can be bullies and be bad kids sometimes, but at least they're still human.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's what sets you apart from being kind of a caricature of a villain or like or not effective. And I think, I've talked about this a good amount. I think there's like a bit of a villain problem right now in movies. I think a lot of movies don't know how to write good villains, and I think,
or their villains are too good.
Yeah, or it's to the point where, they become kind of the central focus and everyone's like super just obsessed with them. And it's a balance, right? I think of like, showing the antagonism and then also showing, like you said, they're a person, maybe there's you can see kind of the why behind what they're doing. And it makes the story more interesting. But yeah, I mean, all in all, this to me, I think was definitely a big part of my childhood. This is definitely a nostalgic movie for me. I love this.
When would you have first seen this?
I was young.
Because you've got like 3 years on me.
Yes. Yeah. I would say, I want to say I watched it probably, I was like maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But, the reason I kind of got into movies in the first place was really through my parents.
Yeah.
And they showed us kind of a lot of classics and stuff growing up. So this is one we would watch all the time. And I haven't watched 2 and 3 in a long time. I would like to go back and watch them. And the only one I've never watched is the one you mentioned when we were talking, the Hilary Swank movie. People like hate that movie, correct?
They do, and I've found that it's not terrible. It's just not very good.
What, and not to, do you have like a quick take on it? Like, what do you think worked or didn't work, or like
the highlight of it again? And it all just comes back to Pat Morita. The dynamic between Hilary Swank and him, they have really good chemistry, and the relationship between their characters is really, really solid. There's a really nice scene where, so like her character, her parents died when she was young, and she's lived with her grandparents ever since. But the only one she connected with was her grandfather, who served in World War II with Pat Morita.
Okay.
And so that's where he comes in. Is the grandfather dies, and he comes in town for the funeral, and he meets her. And so like her grandfather was, between her grandparents, the only one she ever really had a relationship with. So the fact that now that parent figure is gone in her life, he steps into that position.
Okay.
And it works really, really well. It's just literally everything else in the movie is bad.
Got you. So this takes place in the franchise after Karate Kid 3? Is that okay? Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Maybe I'll Maybe I'll give that a watch. I think we should move into the second movie here, which is Karate Kid from 2010 with Jaden Smith. I'm excited to talk to you about this because I think this movie is sort of divisive in a way. I think it gets I've seen it get a lot of criticism. What is your general take or feeling about this? And has that evolved over the years or been consistent?
I think throughout the past 10 years, I've been one of the few people to champion this movie a little bit. And it's truly just comes down to the way this movie depicts the martial world, the world of martial arts, especially within China. And even though I said in a video, my last video on YouTube recently, is a handful of it probably propaganda? Yeah, probably. Because if you pay attention to sort of the world, like how a lot of movies get made in China, and like, you know, of course, how movies get American movies get marketed in China, a lot of it comes down to propaganda. But I still just think a lot of it is so beautiful. I love watching so much of the stuff they do in this. I think Jackie gives a wonderful performance. Jackie is such a good actor, and Americans don't really get to see it very often. I think this is the first time he showed the Western world that he can act. Like if you go back to Hong Kong, one of his best acting performances, I think, is a movie called Heart of the Dragon, which is problematic in its own ways, but there is some very, very good acting in that movie. And I just think so much of this movie is solid. My only problem is it falls apart at the end tournament, and that just comes down to really bad camera work and editing, because it's so clear that these kids have trained and have actually like become proficient in their martial arts, and then the editing just doesn't want to show you any of it. And that's where I'm like, oh, this movie for me was like a 4.5 and immediately drops down to a 3 just because it just feels so shoddily put together in the final 25 minutes.
So do you think that's them being afraid that they won't be good enough, it won't look good enough to show, or what do you think that is?
I think that's a post Jason Bourne world.
Okay.
Post Jason Bourne, that was just the style you did things. And the movies in 2010, when was like Bourne Ultimatum was probably 2008, so it was still quite fresh. That style of doing action, and we don't get anything clear and like well focused action for at least another 4 years when it comes to Hollywood, because that's when John Wick comes out in 2014. So it was just the style they did things. And it's kind of a bummer because the training up to that point is wonderful. I love all the training sequences. I think, again, the relationship between Han and Dre is a very well done relationship. It's just a copied formula, so it works. But even when they're training together, what I think works so well about their training together compared to the originals is because they do like the bamboo training where he's got like the things wrapped around his wrist and they have to like copy each other's movements. That just helps build their dynamic in like physically. Like you could watch that moment in silence with the audio turned off, and it will still make complete sense and it will convey everything it needs to convey.
Yeah.
And so because all the training I find so beautiful, and then all the final fights are just rough, and it really frustrates me.
Yeah. It really is an interesting movie. I think it's one that there are certain movies I think everyone just kind of tells themselves are bad, but we haven't rewatched in a long time. And I think, I don't think this is one. I thought it was really average. Rewatching this, I really, really liked it. I liked it a lot. And I think Jaden Smith got like kind of crucified for this movie and his performance, to the point where I find it really strange. Like I don't understand what people are seeing. I think he's really good in this.
Yeah, no, he's great. I think Taraji P. Henson is good too. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, she's a wonderful actor, and I think they have a good dynamic. And it's interesting because all these movies really are about going somewhere new and starting a new life, and like how difficult that is on kids. Like, this one is. You take going from New Jersey to California, and now you have, I think
Detroit,
yeah, to Beijing.
Detroit, yeah.
And I think this movie does a good job showing kind of the culture shock and showing how how different it is and how he's kind of figuring things out, whether it be through language or just how life is. And I think they capture that kind of like wonder, and I think they do that in all three of these movies pretty well.
I think what hurt this, one thing that hurt it is it's just being of the era of the 80s remake. Like the year after this, you get the Footloose remake. The year after that, you get the Red Dawn remake. Movies no one's talking about anymore.
Yeah.
And what, like maybe like a couple years after that, you get the Point Break remake. Like this, it was an era of a lot of really mediocre films being made. But I don't think The Karate Kid 2010 is one of them.
No, neither do I. And, audiences went and saw this. They made it for $40 million, reasonable, and it made $360 million. It's funny you were talking about the propaganda aspect. I know there was the Chinese version of this movie. They
Kung
kind
Fu
of
Dream, I think, is what it was called.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was called, but they changed it around basically to make it seem like Dre was like picking all the fights and he was like the villain.
Really?
Which
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
They took out the kissing scene and they changed a lot of the stuff with so he wasn't getting bullied. I don't want to make I'm not making any kind of sweeping generalizations here. I know when for example, when The Force Awakens came out, you look at the poster that they put out in China and they take Finn and basically shrink him down and push him off.
Well, the Black Panther posters are the Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame posters. I think the American posters, you see Chadwick Boseman's face. The Chinese posters, they put the mask on.
Yeah, and my question is is that more so a reflection of the government, or is racism that bad?
It's the government. You have to, in order to get movies made in China, you have to pass so many rules. They set so many different guidelines to get a movie to play in China or to get a movie made in China. And it's stupid stuff. It's silly stuff sometimes. I made a TikTok about one rule that I think is so dumb. And it's that if a hero or any character breaks the law in any way, by the end of the movie, they have to go to jail. And I watched 2 movies last year where that happens. I watched a Tony Jaa film that was, even though he's Thai, he made a Chinese film called Striking Rescue, where he's this guy who this tech billionaire essentially, who of course has like his own little army of bad guys, kills his family. So then he goes on a revenge plot and he ends up killing a lot of people. That makes him a bad guy now. So at the end of the movie, he goes to a police station and he turns himself in. A movie called Hunt the Wicked, where the main hero is a cop, but in order to help defeat this terrorist, he has to bend the rules. He has to go rogue. And because he went rogue at the end of the movie, he has to turn himself in. And that's just one example of something that has to be done, but they have a whole list of things that must be done in a movie for it to either play in China or to be made in China. And it's really dumb.
That's like Hays Code type stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we moved past that. It's a shame, but it also, it's such a bizarre situation. I think, I'm imagining being someone like Jaden Smith or John Boyega and being that, having a conversation with this studio and being like, well, to market this to a country that's going to make up the second highest portion of the box office, we have to essentially bend the knee in a way to racism. And that's crazy. That has to be a really bizarre feeling. But, it's also, this is obviously a movie that is focused on China. But, anyway, I think
I'm surprised they let well, I mean, like you said, they changed the whole plot in the Chinese cut, and I've never seen that before.
Yeah. I'd be curious.
Yeah, I mean, they would not be okay with the depiction of the bad guys in the American copy. They would not, just based on what I know about like how they make movies and even how the Chinese government treats Chinese martial arts. Do you know the story of the Chinese MMA fighter?
No.
So China, they may have pulled back on it a bit. It really works with this movie. You could see it in how they depict Chinese kung fu. They really push, like they love their cultural, like sort of importance and history of like the Chinese martial arts. So they were pushing this thing where like, hey, look at how amazing our kung fu is. Look at how amazing all this stuff we have is. And this Chinese MMA fighter who wasn't even that good of an MMA fighter, but he was like, this stuff doesn't work. So he was challenging all these like old kung fu masters just to prove a point of saying like, you guys are like, you're in a cult saying that this is the most proficient, amazing system in the world. It doesn't work. The world has moved on. The world has evolved in this aspect of knowing how to defend yourself and knowing how to fight. So he was challenging these masters and he was slaughtering them. And it was like, but it was like, because he was doing them all under like sanctioned fights that like have to go through the government. So he would knock some old dude out and then they would be like, it was a draw. And he pissed some people off. And I'm not sure like if he had to like leave China or something, but he made a lot of people in the government very, very angry.
That sounds dangerous, honestly.
Yeah.
Man, what do you know? I'm gonna look that up. Do you know his name or?
I don't, but I'm sure it's a very easy story to find.
Yeah. I'm gonna check that out.
There's a matter of fact, there's a YouTuber named Super Eye Patch Wolf who has a video. I love his channel. He'll talk about anime, he'll talk about pro wrestling, he'll talk about video games, and he did a video on like pretty much called like the world of fake martial arts, and it talks about everything from like scam artists in the 80s in America who like are like, oh, I can knock you out without even touching you, to that stuff, and it's a really interesting video.
Steven Seagal, a little Aikido,
a little bit of Steven, a little bit of, like, but it's like you see those like videos of like people who run at their master and the master just goes,
yep. Yeah.
And they just fall. Yeah, that stuff.
Yeah. What did I want to ask you? Oh, I think one of the main critiques of this movie that you oftentimes hear is, okay, this is called The Karate Kid, but this is a movie about Kung Fu. It's a movie about China. What is your take on that? What do you think the relevance is there? How do you feel?
So I said it. I posted a YouTube video ranking all the existing martial arts movies before the new one came out. I mentioned this when I started talking about the 2010 film, in that it's never affected me whatsoever. I don't care.
Yeah.
I could not give a damn. Call it whatever you want. I don't, and you know what? So many people in America refer to all martial arts as karate anyway. Like if you do martial arts, somebody goes, "Oh, you do karate?" Or if I talk about kung fu movies, it doesn't matter if it's from China, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, whatever. Someone's going, "Oh, you like karate movies?"
Yeah. It's
like everything's karate. It's like how to old people all video games are Nintendo.
Yeah.
So call it whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, when you look at America, I think there's a lot of people in America that probably couldn't even tell the difference between Chinese and Japanese. So and just, refer to Asian people as some type of monolith. So I think it's funny that people then are so upset that, oh, there's no karate. Like, do you actually care? I think
the amount of Korean people who play Chinese people in Hollywood films is hilarious.
Yeah. And something I was thinking about making a video about this, honestly. I was thinking about it watching the new movie. Asian representation in Hollywood is fucking horrible. Horrible.
Yeah,
like there literally aren't there's barely any Asian actors or stars, and like I feel like that doesn't get talked about enough. Like I feel like we all just kind of just accept it, and I think it's really strange. And I was thinking about it watching Legends, because I was like, Ben Wang I think is awesome in that movie, and I was like, it's just, and again, I don't want to jump the gun talking about that, but it's really strange, and I think doesn't quite get talked about enough. And I think obviously, the answer is go watch movies like you champion a lot from other parts of the world, but like it still should be in Hollywood. Like it should be addressed in Hollywood. And I think
a lot of them will just leave. A lot of them don't like how they're treated here. A lot of them maybe will come from other countries to be in Hollywood movies, and they'll be like, I'll just go back and do that. I mean, like you can go all the way back to Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee found, honestly, you can Bruce Lee modeled his career off of Clint Eastwood, where Clint Eastwood said, okay, I'm not doing very well over here. Let's go over to Italy and blow up.
Yeah.
And that's where Clint Eastwood becomes a star. So Bruce Lee copies Clint Eastwood, where he's like, okay, well, let's go over to Hong Kong and become one of the biggest action stars in the world, and then Hollywood will accept me. Jackie Chan comes over, does the big brawl in 1980 and says this was not fun, goes back to Hong Kong, makes some great stuff. And I've seen that with a handful of actors where they come over, they do some stuff. Byung-hun Lee is a fantastic South Korean actor. He was Storm Shadow in the G.I. Joe movies. He's in like the Red films and the remake of Magnificent Seven. He's the main character in like I Saw the Devil, if you've seen that. But
yes, love it.
He is a brilliant South Korean actor, and he comes over. He does a handful of American films where he probably doesn't care for the way his characters are written or anything, and he goes back over to South Korea.
Yeah. And do you think it's a problem with a lot of the characters being essentially stereotypes or just being written in a way that is offensive or boring? And I think that's kind of the main problem. Like what is it, the stories that are being told? Like,
I think it could be the stories being told. I mean, you've seen some progression. Simu Liu is really big. Everybody from the cast of like Fresh Off the Boat has done something really solid for themselves. That show has its own issues, I guess. But it really, for a lot of them, it probably just comes down to like offers, like roles that are offered.
Yeah.
Like, you get every now and again, you have like a Shang-Chi or even, Crazy Rich Asians has whatever. A lot of Asian actors have been blowing up recently, Asian American actors, but for the most part, Hollywood in the past has just had specific ideas of who can play what.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that you have an alien where it's like, oh, Ripley was never written, or at least maybe was written as a man, but they decided, oh, this person's the best for it. For the most part, that does not happen. When a casting director or a writer has a specific idea as to what this character should be, it's usually white, and they are not going to break from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even with Simu, like Shang-Chi was like 2018, 20.
Mm.
No, it was 2021. But like since then, like he just kind of sat on the bench, and I feel like his career has kind of sputtered. Like he was in like that Atlas movie with Jennifer. Like
yeah, I really liked him. He was just in what was that like deep sea diving movie? I just watched it a couple weeks ago.
It came out this year, right?
Yes.
It's called.
I'm trying to look back my letterboxd here, but I mean, he's not the most complex character in that, but I really enjoyed his performance in it.
Yeah.
Last breath.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. I heard generally good things about that. But yeah, he was in Barbie. Marvel's kind of left him sitting around and left him.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all.
They've done that with a bunch of characters. I mean, Moon Knight is just one of your.
I would have greenlit. I know it's a kung fu movie, and I'm biased, but it's the fact that he was a protagonist. He's a new protagonist in that world that people like.
You talking about Shang-Chi?
Shang-Chi, yeah. I would have greenlit a sequel to that immediately. It's not just because it's a kung fu movie. It's because he's a solid protagonist and the fans took to him so well.
Yeah, and they don't seem to recognize sometimes, and I think this is a problem across a lot of different, genres, studios, whatever. Like the market research or like the understanding of what the consumer actually is looking for is just not there. Mm-hmm. And it's baffling because they have teams of people that are supposed to be doing this stuff, but they just seem very out of touch as to what people actually want. And if you just tap into that, it's there. Like listen to people, and your movies will succeed. And it's frustrating because, I think Shang-Chi is a good movie. I love the first 2/3 of it that are focusing on martial arts and the character. Then you get like a CGI fucking dragon.
The movie does not need a dragon. It does not.
It's like, man, why do you have to do this big Marvel? It's the Skybeam effect, just CGI bullshit down the.
I wrote a post one time saying what the ending of that movie should have been, and I think that movie would have been so good if it did that. It would have been so much better. It should have been. The ending should have been because the villain is a bad dad and childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So the ending should have been like the ending of the first Raid film. It's 2-on-1. So it's make him the final fight. You don't need the dragon. Make the brother and sister have to like put aside their differences and take down their father, take down the father that ruined their childhoods.
Yeah.
And just make it this big dramatic final fight. Include the 10 rings. You know, Shang-Chi has to get the 10 rings away from his dad somehow. But if it just would have been this super dramatic, well choreographed final fight between a brother and sister and their evil father, that's your ending right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and really like continue to let the martial arts shine through. Like they've been the most interesting feature of the film to that point. So let the climax of the movie be that. Like that's what the movie is. Like and that's another conversation about letting movies have their own identity and not just being a Kevin Feige movie that has to be everything else, but you know, be a genre movie the whole way through. But you know, we can talk about Marvel forever. But you know, circling back to your point that we were talking about at the beginning, I do agree with you. Whereas I think it's the Karate Kid, like it's the spirit of the story, like it's the general. It's the setup of the story that to me is the Karate Kid. It's not just, it doesn't have to be karate. It could be about any martial art. You know, it could be about Taekwondo. It could be a boxing movie. I don't give a shit. I mean, we saw boxing in the new movie. So yeah, I think this movie is really, really solid. And like you said, I think Jackie Chan is the standout here. I think Mr. Han feels like a character that he's very heavy. There's kind of a big sadness to him.
Yeah. He's far more disillusioned than Miyagi.
Yes.
Like the way he treats Dre at the beginning, like toward the first half of their relationship in this, is far different than the way Miyagi treats Daniel. Like he's willing to train him, he accepts him, and he's like, yeah, okay, come on in. But he gives off a performance of like caring so much less than Miyagi ever did. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, he's a little more, I think he feels a little more like dangerous than Miyagi too. And he's a little just like a little bit angrier and sadder. Miyagi feels like someone who's very much more just made peace with life and his situation. But yeah, I think it's such a good performance. I mean, all these movies have a romance. When Han is Mei Ying, the girl, she plays the violin. She's kind of Drake's love interest. I don't know that I feel much chemistry there. Like I don't think it necessarily. Like I feel like there's a lot of time put into like the like little romance there, and I don't know. I think some of that could have been cut.
Yeah. It's really devastating though when she comes in and says, "I can't see you anymore. My parents say you're bad for my life."
Yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, they showed, she's a violinist and she's kind of leading up to this performance. That scene is really nice. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I just think maybe they could have cut a little. This movie is like 2 hours 20 minutes. It's definitely
yeah.
But I also, I like the character development. I like the time that's spent setting up. With Jaden and Taraji and Mr. Han, like I feel like it's patient with all that, and I think that makes the story better. So I don't mind.
I do appreciate the sentiment that Mr. Han gives Dre once he like snaps into it, and they have the whole scene. It's the wax on, wax off of him realizing what he's been doing the whole time with the jacket, and when Mr. Han just says all things are kung fu. I think a lot of that comes through. It even comes through in all the violin stuff, because kung fu isn't martial arts. Kung fu doesn't mean training. Kung fu literally means like becoming proficient at something just from working really hard at it. Kung fu isn't fighting. Kung fu is playing the violin. Kung fu is being really good at cooking. Kung fu is dancing. Kung fu is, like Jackie Chan said, everything. So I really do appreciate that this movie brought that stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because he also builds it around, because he notices when he first comes to fix the sink or whatever water, like it's like a respect thing. Like his mom is like, pick up your fucking jacket, like, and he's not listening to her and he's not respecting her. So like I like that it's not just a mundane task. It's that he's taking a concept that is about respect for his mom, because he sees he's not doing that, and that's what he's focusing on. And it's just like a little extra thing that makes it worked more for me, and I like it. And like I said, I think Jaden's really good here, and I feel like he definitely feels a lot more athletic than Ralph Macchio or Macchio.
I mean, he trained with Jackie for like 3 months leading up to the movie.
Yeah, I think it shows. I think they have good chemistry as like a student teacher duo. I think the script is pretty good. I think he's.
How do you feel about the cutting out sort of the extended ending?
That I don't know about.
The extended ending is Mr. Han having to fight the rival teacher at the end. So they cut that out completely.
How do you feel? How does it go? / how do you feel about it?
I just think that, I mean, if you're gonna have Jackie Chan there, give him that one last final fight. Maybe they don't want him to outshine the children, but it's mostly just being the kung fu nerd in that the villain is played by Rong Guang-yu, who he's the Iron Monkey. He's got some great stuff. He's the villain in Jet Li's My Father is a Hero. He's a really fun performer and a really good actor.
Yeah.
So just to see him and Jackie Chan get a good fight there would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's really solid in this. And I mean, taking on that John Kreese kind of role is big shoes to fill. I think he does a really nice job. And I think, they really drive home the point of kind of what you talked about at the beginning with like, this is kind of like, it's large scale training. Like it feels almost like state sponsored where like everyone is, you have these huge training sequences. This movie looks great. Like the cinematography is really nice. The music is
the Wudong Mountain stuff, all that stuff in the mountains, it looks amazing. And that one of my favorite parts I brought up again in my YouTube video talking about it is I love the way they depict the differences in teaching styles, where when they go to the wushu school, you just see like 100 kids all performing the same stuff. It's like it's an assembly line of wushu and kung fu artists. But then when you go to the Wudong Mountains, it's like seeing this drab gray factory and then going into the mountains and just seeing like a colorful world of kung fu. And it's just like, the colors all around, the styles everyone's doing something different. Everyone's making it their own. And I do love the two depictions of how that works.
Yeah, there's actual like individuality and like expression through like the movement rather than going through the motions. I really like that. I just I like this movie a whole lot in general. Is there anything you outside of the ending, is there anything that stands out to you that you think didn't work or you really don't like? Any performances you don't like? Anything specific?
There's a slight feeling I have with this movie of a tinge of soullessness just in it being an 80s remake. And I can't exactly place it. There's just a few moments in it. Maybe it's in some of the bullying. Maybe the bully doesn't work as well as William Zabka. But there's just a handful of moments throughout the middle of the movie where it doesn't have a lot of soul to it.
Yeah, and it is very much, it's not like a shot for shot remake, but like it's just taking chunks of scenes and just
and that might be it. Is just like, oh, I've seen this scene before. You just put it in a different location. So the moments where the movie makes everything its own, all the training stuff. I think all the training stuff is very unique to this movie. Of course, being a kung fu nerd, I love that. Like the again, that bamboo thing where he's got the wires wrapped around his wrist and he has to follow his movements. It's very original Drunken Master with Jackie Chan. He has to do that with Yuen Su Tin and some of the training scenes in that. So the moments where this movie can make something its own, I love how much more his mom is sort of into it. I think his mom is far more into it than the mom in the original Karate Kid. There's the moment after he finds Miyagi or he finds Han destroying his car. And again, like you talked about how Miyagi is far more centered and like living in his reality. In that moment for Miyagi, he's kind of just drinking away the pain and having a good time. Whereas Han is hammered and just going to town in this car because he's still living in that pain. But after that moment, when Dre picks him up and is like, come on, let's just train. Let's work this off. Let's just go train. I love that the mom comes to find Dre and she sees them training and she just like smiles. I love that moment.
Yeah, and it adds to the connection between Dre and Mr. Han, and like I think, like I said, their chemistry is really, really good in this movie, and I think that just kind of adds to it. And I think like Mr. Han, like you don't want to do a fucking Miyagi impression. Like he's not. You want him to be a character that can stand on his own and do something different, and that's exactly what Jackie Chan is doing. And that's what Jaden Smith is doing as with Dre. He's his own character. And I couldn't agree more. Sherry Parker is Taraji's character in this. Much more of a character than Daniel LaRusso's mom. She's kind of there to just be like, "Oh, you talking to any girls?" Oh, she's like,
she's there to be Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, all in all, I really enjoyed this movie. Far more than I kind of remembered enjoying it, and I was very happy to rewatch it. Any closing thoughts on this?
I think more people should give it a shot. I think again, Jackie Chan gives a great performance. Jaden, even Taraji, gives great performances. The training is beautiful. I think too many people wrote this movie off when it first came out, and they should, especially with the new movie coming out, go back and give it a shot.
Yeah, and I think especially if you watch this before or after watching the new movie, you might be like, "Wow, this is really damn good."
Yeah.
This movie, I don't think is very good. To maybe give some setup for this, do you want to talk with brief thoughts about? I haven't watched Cobra Kai. Do you want to give you a brief take on that in general and how it feeds into this?
Cobra Kai adds so much context, heart, and soul to a world that was already kind of a well done, like just a story and world that we already had. It gives far more backstory to Zabka. There's a reason it's called Cobra Kai and not Miyagi-Do and not Daniel or whatever. It's about William Zabka's Johnny. Like, why was he the way he was? We learned his childhood and all that stuff, and him like channeling that into like the next generation, and them. It's about them sort of like putting aside their past and making sure that the next generation of kids coming up are okay and are healthy through the martial arts. There's so much more after that. There's so much cartoonish gang violence, karate gang violence that is sometimes wonderful and sometimes dumb. Yeah. It's a very dumb show sometimes. And in fact, I watched the first season by myself, maybe even the second season. And then my wife sort of saw me watching it and she was like, "I'm interested. Let's watch this over." So we started it together from the front. And she was like, "This is just a soap opera. You're watching a soap opera." And I was like, "You're correct. This is a soap opera."
Yeah, but an entertaining one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, that show is so damn popular. Like it's absolutely insane how beloved it really is. And I feel like if we don't get Cobra Kai, we probably don't get this movie. I think this movie is very banking on that audience showing up.
And I think if that audience sees this, I think they're not going to be happy with it. Yeah,
which is kind of what I'm hearing in general from fans of the show.
I know that we've had 6 seasons with the characters, so we know them, but like even within the first season, Shola Maridueña's character is so likable and is so well written that it really baffles me as to why they didn't want to bring in anybody from Cobra Kai and they just wanted to make their own thing. I love Li Fong in this. I think he does a good job. Mm-hmm. But just when you already have a cast of amazing characters to play with, I don't understand why they needed to do new stuff.
Yeah, I want to talk about, we just talked so much about Jackie Chan and Mr. Han. Almost feels like a different person in this movie.
Mm.
Kind of sort of played oftentimes for comedic relief. Very light and goofy. And I found that strange, especially after watching, and I understand, maybe he like grew as a person and got happier and all, but like it doesn't feel like the same person even. I don't think. What's your take on that?
It gave me the vibes of I had a real problem with The Accountant 2 last month.
Yeah. Not a good movie.
Not a good movie.
I got flamed saying that, but it's just not a good movie.
No, and I took my wife to see it, and she was like, "That's the most dad movie you've ever made me watch."
Yeah.
And we watched the first one.
Like, it's a good one. Like, it's a good.
Yeah, and we watched the first one leading up to it, and she was like, "That was pretty good."
Yeah.
But I bring that up because Ben Affleck in The Accountant and Ben Affleck in The Accountant 2
different
are two different characters.
Thank you.
Completely different characters.
I was saying, yes.
Yeah, and when Jackie Chan first comes on screen and he's so happy, having a good time, smiley. What it kind of made me think of just now in this moment, I guess, is Jackie has given up giving complicated performances.
Yeah,
because he tried and it failed at the box office in China. He did a continuation of Police Story with Police Story Lockdown or Police Story 2013, where that movie is far more a drama than an action film. It has a few fight scenes, it has a few action beats, but it's a drama. It's an acty drama, and Jackie acts his ass off, and he's good. And I'm pretty sure that movie in China bombed at the box office, so he hasn't done it since. And I get that vibe here. Why what?
Why do you think it bombed?
I think people want the Jackie they know. I think people want the goofy, fun Jackie.
Yeah.
And I saw that too. And when the movie first came on Netflix in America, I just kept seeing like people reviewing it saying like, this was bad. This was boring. I'm like, no, you wanted Rush Hour Jackie.
Yeah.
This is Jackie trying to show you something different, and you're not accepting it.
Yeah. And I think it's the eternal struggle for all of us talking about movies is like, you can't judge a movie because it wasn't what you were expecting. That doesn't
exactly.
And that's, also, I'm nobody to tell you how to fucking judge your movies, whatever. But like, I just think like I am, maybe I could talk about it myself. Like, I'm trying to do better at like watching something and being like taking it for what it is rather than like judging it against how I expected it to be. I think it's always a struggle, especially when you have like an attachment to a story or an actor or whatever. So I think that's kind of the struggle for everyone. But
I hate to send us down that rabbit hole, but that I really had that, not even realization, but just feeling with like the new Star Wars movies where I got to a point where I tried to just be, because it really came down to, I saw so many people online doing their theories and doing their expectations and saying, I think this is what's going to happen. Well, I bet this is what happens. I bet Rey is this. I bet this person is this. And then when something like The Last Jedi says, you're all wrong. And then all those people say, well, this movie's bad because I was wrong. I'm like, no, just let it talk to you. Let it listen to what this movie is trying to do and don't put words in its mouth.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I just rewatched all three of those. And I made a long ass video talking about the first half of my thoughts, and I was going to make another one. They're very interesting movies. The Last Jedi, I think it's a solid movie. There are moments to me that are so fucking stupid that I can't get past them. But then, like, I was thinking about making the video today. I think the Rise of Skywalker should have been a home run because all it had to do was take what The Last Jedi did, continue the story, and just maybe take out a little bit of the goofiness, and you have a home run of a movie. And I think people will look back at that trilogy in a much better light, because I don't know if you like the third movie. I think it's truly fucking abysmal. Like, it's embarrassing. Yeah. Like the writing is so bad, you almost like can't even process how it got.
That's where I almost put my foot in my mouth and was a hypocrite, because after The Last Jedi, I fully accepted just saying, you know what? I'm done with watching people's theories. I'm done with theorizing. I'm done with speculating. I'm just going to wait.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I did when I was a kid and you had no other choice. There was no YouTube to go to. There was no TikTok when I was 9 years old waiting for episode 3. There was none of it. You just waited. So I'm just gonna accept whatever this movie is and enjoy it. But then The Last Jedi, or then Rise of Skywalker comes out, and Poe says somehow Palpatine returned, and I'm like, so I immediately am a hypocrite there because I'm like, that's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, it's disappointing, and like the Last Jedi, like I do have problems with it, but like it steered the story in the proper direction, and then they just pissed it all away. But yeah, they're interesting movies to talk about. I think there's a lot of good in those movies, a lot of bad. That's a long conversation, but
yeah, I don't remember how we got here. I don't remember.
No, just talking about expectations. I think it's a really good point because that is a lot of the emotional reaction to a lot of those movies. And yeah, I mean, I just, maybe a lot of people haven't rewatched the 2010 movie, but I just think seeing Mr. Han here, it's like, this is not the same person. Yeah. I really liked Ben Wang his as Li Fang. I think I wish he had a better movie to be in. My kind of take about this movie was, and I don't think it's necessarily the popular take, but I liked the first half. I like the stuff with Joshua Jackson plays Victor, who runs this pizza shop. His daughter is Mia, played by Sadie Stanley. All three of them, I like. I like watching them hang out.
Yeah.
Ben, Li Fang is training Victor, and I think it's something new, right? It's like seeing a karate kid who's able to teach. And I think teaching is interesting and fun. And I like that part of the movie. I thought that was riveting. But I'm seeing people say
that. And me saying that the movie is shallow and insincere, that's the most sincere part of the movie.
Yeah.
But then it just kind of throws it away in the first 40 minutes.
I could not agree with you more. And then you get into and I think the second half of this movie, and it feels like it's weird because this is a short movie that's going 1 million miles an hour the entire time.
It is. It's so, and you know what? I saw the movie with my dad, and when the training starts with Jackie and Daniel Ralph Macchio, it starts on them saying all right, we have 7 days. What can we do with 7 days? And then it has the big 7 comes on the screen. 7.
God. I hate it.
And then a couple, they do some training and you see a few things and then it goes 1. It's like, where'd the other 6 days go?
Yeah. In those 7 days, they are merging Kung Fu and karate. They are just creating a new form and they're going to teach it to this kid.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Man.
You know what best defines this movie in saying it's shallow and rushed is his friendship with his tutor. We see one scene where he meets him and is told, hey, this is your ACT tutor.
Yeah.
And then the next scene, they're best friends.
Yeah, and I thought that kid was funny. Alan, I enjoyed his character, but he's just what is he? I don't know.
I think that perfectly sums up how much of this movie works.
Yeah, and I think Mia and Li Fang have good chemistry. I think they're good together. I think they're fun to watch. The villain in this is a nothing. He's just
nothing.
He's just a
guy. And I like that actor a lot. I like Aramis Knight. I first saw him in the show Into the Badlands. It was on AMC. I love that show. Canceled after the 3rd season, and it made me so angry because it had a really great cliffhanger, and I was really excited for season 4. And then he also shows up in, I believe, the Miss Marvel show. So I really like him, and I think he's probably a solid performer when it comes to the martial arts and stuff, because Into the Badlands was a martial arts show. I don't know if he had training before that show, but it seems that he took to it and just kind of kept doing it. So I like the fact that they brought him in as the villain, but then he had nothing to do.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think the villains in these first 2 movies you talked about were at least solid. They had some personality to them. I mean, Johnny obviously is more iconic, but he just wasn't given much to do. And this movie needs to be an extra 20, 30, 45. It just needs more. I
would have been okay with the 2 hour and 10 minute movie here.
Yes, I agree. And it's a shame because, like I said, like I think Ben just deserves more. And it feels like Mr. Han and Daniel had to be shoved into this movie. And like
Mhm.
Ralph in this movie is just he's there for a check, man. Like he's just sleepwalking. And if you're gonna do that, like just don't say yes or don't like.
Mhm.
It's hard to watch. I think like it feels so forced in for nostalgia's sake, for the sake
Yeah.
of Cobra Kai fans. Like I just
And
didn't
them
need.
doing with it really bugged me, the scene, and it's in the trailer, when Jackie tells Ralph, Lee means to me what what you meant to Mr. Miyagi. And in that moment, my response was, show don't tell, because you've not shown me that at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's sort of the like Netflixification or streaming moviefication of things, where like movies that are designed to be listened to and not watched. And
Mm.
I hate that, and I it's exactly what you're saying. I want to see you show it to me. I want to like actually be able to feel it. I don't want the characters to just say how they're feeling or say what's happening. Like I want to see it happen. And I agree. You mentioned that them putting those numbers on the screen for like 7 days. Like there's a lot of bizarre editing to this and just bad filmmaking, honestly, where it just looks ugly. And it feels like it feels like you'd be watching this on like TikTok or something. Like honestly, and with the music too is really bad. There's a lot of like needle.
It kind of felt like they tried to do, and it was kind of it was like in the transitions and some other stuff, kind of like that, I guess. It felt like they were kind of doing like Spider-Verse.
Yes. It's a Sony movie. Like that's exactly what it is. They tried to hit that feel, and I think there's multiple references to like Spider-Man, Peter Parker in the movie, which is
they call him Asian Peter Parker. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they're trying to hit on that feel, and maybe it's working with audiences. Like we said, I think this made $21 million already. We're recording this on Sunday, the weekend it dropped. So I'm assuming this will be financially successful, but
and I want it to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think this movie has a likability to it, mainly because of the three people I keep mentioning with that trio. It's not a movie I want to see do badly. I don't think it's like completely soulless. I just don't think I think it's also with like a directorial debut. Jonathan Entwistle doesn't have a Wikipedia page, but I think it's his feature-length debut. So like, I get it. But
I think the movie is scared to tackle a handful of things. Like we get that scene, and it mostly just feels like something I felt was unresolved. We get the moment where, so like his backstory being that his brother was killed, they were jumped after a tournament, very Kickboxer 2. He has a moment where he finds himself in the guy's pizza shop, and he's just hitting the bag, and he's just taking out some anger on the bag. And it's because he goes home, he sees his mom asleep on the couch, he sees the picture of his brother, he can't sleep, he goes and he hits the bag, the guy finds him, and he's like, oh, what are you fighting? What are you going through? It's like, okay, let it be that. Let's have that dramatic moment. Let's have that moment where we have these two characters who get to connect over something.
Yeah.
And like that could be our new Miyagi and Daniel dynamic. Is you said his name was Victor, I've already forgotten his name, but Victor and Lee Fong. They could be our new Miyagi and Daniel. They could have that relationship. And we could have Lee Fong have someone to talk to and not just have to take his anger out on the bag. And that's the movie doesn't want to do that at all.
Yeah, because it can't, because you still have to have Mr. Han and Daniel as the
Yeah.
Miyagi later on, and it's just like that's not the interesting part of this movie. The interesting part of this movie is allowing it to stand on its own and tell its own story, which it half does, and like that. Getting that first half made the second half that much more depressing. And we talked about, you know, the fight sequences or the tournament sequences in all three of these movies are legitimately maybe the worst part of every movie, which is interesting. In this, it's literally like a montage. There's no
I don't understand that at all. It all happened so fast, and I was like, that's what we were kind of here for. Like you don't watch Rocky and spend 2 hours building up to the fight, getting emotionally invested in our characters and their purpose in life, just for the final fight to last 2 minutes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's the thing is too. I think like Ben, I think can actually like move and fight a little bit.
Yeah,
like
he's got a dance background.
Yeah, so like why not? And they try to like show that off in some of the like street fights and like the stuff that happens throughout the film. And like that's fine, but show it to us in the tournament as well. That was frustrating. And if I was him, I'd be frustrated too.
Yeah, and then I don't feel like a lot of that was shot to the very best of their ability at all either. A lot of that was a lot of close angles. There's a scene that frustrated me and my dad sitting next to me, where he's the bad guy is, instead of Cobra Kai, it's essentially like a martial arts mafia of who they're money launderers, and if you can't pay them back, they'll beat you up. And so like some of the bad guys come out of the crowd after Lee's fight, and so Lee, Daniel, and Mr. Han all have like a quick little skirmish where they all have like a little bit of a fight there.
Yeah,
you can't see any of it.
No, and maybe that was on purpose. I mean, I think Jackie said he wasn't going to train at all for this movie and didn't have any plans on doing that, which I understand. Maybe they just wanted to kind of get through that scene, but then like don't put it in the movie. Like it's not necessary. Outside of just having that, it's sort of the moment.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say like there's the moment of Mr. Han protecting Dre, and there's a moment of Miyagi showing up to stop Daniel getting jumped. It's kind of like that, just in a different spin.
Or take that moment where instead of Daniel and Mr. Han getting involved in that fight, 3 guys get in the ring, and we get to see Lee use both of the styles he's been learning to defend himself against 3 guys at once. That could have been interesting.
Yeah, maybe like Daniel's like gonna step in, and Mr. Han's like, "No, wait, let's let him cook."
No, let's see what he does.
Yeah, like that would be solid. They weren't interested in doing anything interesting with the writing here. They just were literally going through the motions down the stretch, and it is what it is. It almost feels like they ran out of money or ran out of time, and we're just like, we gotta wrap this up. But I don't know. I mean, they had $50 million to play with. I just think, I'm curious. Do you think this will get a sequel, or?
They definitely set it up, and I guess it all comes down to box office as to if it's going to get a sequel. I'd be interested to see what could be done with a sequel. I think if they do, they have to bring in characters from Cobra Kai because, spoilers, but they bring in Johnny for the final 2 minutes to have a little bit of back and forth dialogue, which maybe it's just because I watched Cobra Kai, but that's some of the more entertaining dialogue of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think this will probably be successful, and then maybe they're a little more patient with the sequel and try to write an interesting story. And
if they get a sequel, do you think Jackie's coming back?
I don't want to. I kind of hope not at this point.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's time for him to step away. I think what he did in 2010 was so good. I don't want to see. I think it would be move forward. Like be willing to move forward. Give us new characters. give someone else a new opportunity. You know, we were just talking about how bad representation is. Like, give someone new a chance, I think.
What I would like to see a sequel do, and I think it's something even Cobra Kai does well. There's at least two of the Karate Kid movies do it, where in the end it all doesn't come down to a tournament. The motivation has not been a tournament. Karate Kid 2 doesn't end with a tournament. It ends with Shozen showing up at the party having been dishonored and Daniel having to fight him. The next Karate Kid doesn't end with a tournament. The next Karate Kid is Hilary Swank saying, like, who has spent the whole movie being bullied and harassed, stepping up and telling Mr. Miyagi, if I don't fight right now, I'm going to spend the rest of my life being afraid. I'm going to spend the rest of my life not being able to respect myself. So I have to go fight this person right now. I kind of enjoy when it all doesn't come down to a tournament and they can find some other motivation for a fight to happen, for something to happen, and not just be, oh, well, I got a tournament to prepare for.
Yeah, and it also makes it then feel not formulaic. Like, you don't feel like you know every single beat of the story before you see it.
Yeah.
Which I think is ideal, because, like, as soon as this gets rolling, it's not like he's going to lose at the end. Like, there's no stakes, there's no mystery, there's no intrigue. It's just like you're going through the motions. So I agree. I think step outside the box, you know, and be willing to kind of get outside the comfortable framework of what you think a Karate Kid movie should be.
Don't go too far though. Don't go crazy. Don't best of the best 3 and 4 this. Like the first best of the best movie is a tournament movie. I love it. It's one of the best American martial arts movies ever made. That's one I would recommend from the 80s is best of the best. But then if you go to best of the best, like 3 and 4, I think it's best of the best 3. Instead of it being a tournament, now he has to go fight the Klan. And then best of the best 4, I think he's fighting Russians.
Mixing it up.
But don't go nuts. Don't go crazy. But
yeah,
do something.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of hard to make these movies bad. Like, you have to try to mess it up. It's a formula that people like. It's an underdog story. Again, we get the aspect of going somewhere new. You know, this time it's moving from China to the U.S. and I liked the kind of New Yorkness of it. I think he kind of gets like an introduction.
This franchise has never been New York.
Yeah, I think it does a nice job, like, showing the city at its best and people helping each other and being kind and like that kind of being a melting pot. Like, I like that aspect of it. So yeah, I mean, it's a good formula. People like underdogs, but just, you know, that the balance of, like what you said, like being the movie, but also standing on its own and not getting too crazy, but just finding that groove. Do you have any closing thoughts on this? Also, do you have a star ranking for all 3 of these? How do you break them up?
This one, on Letterboxd, I gave 2.5.
Yep.
Which is maybe still being, it's hard to determine if that's being generous or not. OG Karate Kid, I gave a 4, and 2010, I gave, I think, maybe like a 3.5.
Yeah. Yeah. I have the original. It's a 5 for me. I wouldn't change a thing about it. Definitely nostalgia factor there. The second one, I have it a 4. I agree with you. I think that last bit is a little rough, but I love that movie. And this, I had a 2.5 too. And it's the same thing where I was like, I didn't want to trash it because I don't think it's totally empty, but I think it might be a little generous, especially because of the second half. But
yeah,
curious to see what the future looks like. It was interesting seeing this movie get made and seeing all these generations brought together. You know, we're kind of seeing the culmination of all these stories. It was interesting, and they went for it. I just think the execution wasn't there, but it probably will be successful. So,
I think I've heard you're a baseball guy, right? I think y'all watch some baseball movie, and I know that one of y'all is a big golf guy, and some golf movies bugged you. My pet peeve, as somebody who's been to a handful of martial arts schools in my life, is in movies where like the bad guy or somebody takes out some anger and purposefully knocks out somebody else in the school, and everyone's just okay with it.
Yeah, no.
So that happens in this like twice, and I'm like, banned, lifetime ban, membership revoked. They can't come here anymore.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. And like, I mean, that's a whole other conversation in movies. Like, people get like knocked out and stuff so easily and casually, and it's like they never address what that actually means when you get knocked out, like in regards to your brain and your health.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's very funny that no one ever was like, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah, no, not cool.
Do you have any other like big pet peeves with these movies, or things that you think they all could have generally improved on? Or
I don't really have. I mean, my only pet peeve with the original is just that Ralph Macchio doesn't seem to be very athletic.
yeah,
I mean, honestly, the biggest annoyance of the remake and and this one is just comes down to let the performer cook. Get out of the editing room.
yeah,
Back up. I mean, fuck, Jackie Chan is there.
mm-hmm.
Let Jackie Chan direct a scene.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan has directed a dozen or two movies, knows what he's doing. He understands how to capture action. I'm like, just back up the camera. If you have performers who are there and capable, like Jaden Smith was capable. All those kids in that movie were capable. Ben in this movie is fully capable.
Yeah.
Aramis Knight can do it. Jackie is limited now in his age, but he can still throw some stuff out there, even if he didn't want to. He said in a video recently where he's like, yeah, back then, you know, I would, you know, I jump up, throw 3 kicks. Now I jump up, throw 1 kick.
Yeah.
Like, just if you're going to let him do something, show it. Just if you have performers who can, back up the camera and show us. If you have Fred Astaire, and Fred Astaire is throwing down some amazing tap dancing moves, he's going crazy. You don't show him from the waist up and cut 50 times. No, you back up and you let the man cook.
Yeah.
Let him cook. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. In closing here, I want to first get a recommendation from you. Anything you feel like recommending right now from any, you know, any year, any time, anything you have, and then also just let people know where they can find you online to get more of your work. Because, like I said, I think you're great, and you're covering stuff that no one else is covering. I think it's definitely valuable.
You know, I watched a movie last night just so that I could recommend it, and then I decided to probably recommend something else. I watched a British movie called Night Shooters, which is interesting, but instead I'm going to talk about and just tell people to go watch the movie I've been telling people to watch for a whole year. Go watch Life After Fighting, please. Please, people, go watch Life After Fighting. I know I've told you to watch it 1,000 times, probably.
Yes.
It's so good. And talk about letting someone cook. Granted, the man directed his own movie. He let himself cook, but he knew what he was cooking. It's an Australian, independent, very, very cheaply made martial arts film by a guy named Bren Foster. He's an actor, and he's a proper actor. Like, he's a properly trained actor. He's a stunt man. He's a very experienced martial artist. He made an entire martial arts movie from his own Taekwondo school in Australia. And like 99% of the movie takes place in his school. And like, you can, like, the people who play his staff in the movie are his real staff in real life. There's scenes where people are training and it's like his real students training. And like, you know, there's a whole narrative. It's a fairly dark movie, but the action is stunning. The choreography is beautiful. Everyone there, his whole stunt team is amazing. What I like so much about a lot of independent martial arts movies is you have a lot of examples throughout history of stuntmen making their own movies. And what I like to call those is, that's not just a movie, that's a resume. And that man wrote a resume, and he deserves to get every job like he applies for, because that movie is brilliant.
And you can rent it everywhere.
Is it still streaming on Prime? Last I saw it was streaming on Prime.
It looks like it's available to rent. I don't know that excuse me. It's streaming on Prime. You can rent it on Apple TV. So it's available to watch for free if you have a Prime membership.
I just went ahead and bought it on Apple because I will watch it again and again and again.
Cool. Yeah, and that was from last year, correct?
last year. It was so good.
And also let people know where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, boy, I am the martial arts film freak just about everywhere you go. I've got a Facebook page. I barely touch martial arts film freak. I've been martial arts film freak on YouTube for coming up on 9 years, talking all things kung fu martial arts from around the world. Martial arts film freak on TikTok. I made another TikTok called my last name is Glover, so I made another TikTok called the movie Glover because I was like, oh, well, I'll do another one to talk about just other movies, and I never touch it.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, so you can go there, but I'm not there. I'm pretty much just martial arts film freak everywhere you go.
Great. Yeah, and I couldn't recommend your stuff more, and really appreciate all your insight. This was fun talking about all these. There's a lot to get into. Appreciate you watching all this and coming on with us.
I appreciate. I've been listening to the podcast for probably about 6 months now, so I've been waiting to come on.
Appreciate the support, and yeah, I would love to have you back in the future with all of us. This is just Skeleton Crew today with me, but very much
for good reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Enjoy the conversation. Hope everyone did out there as well. So everyone out there, hope you had a good week. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll be back next week. Take care.